Hello, once again, my lords, ladies, and lieges, to another episode of Zodiac Reads, the series where Zodiac finds things to read on the internet and then, well, he reads them for you. Today, for our 15th installment, we are back on r/RPG horror stories, but with something a little bit different. We're not talking about a tabletop role-playing game this time around. Instead, we're actually talking about a live-action role-playing game going wrong. That's right, we're talking about a LARP. I was particularly drawn to this one because I don't often find LARP horror stories on this subreddit, so it was very interesting to me and I wanted to see it through. So I hope you will all join me for today's reading. Without further ado, let's get on with it. My first and last LARP session by user Ye Old Wild. This happened when I was just starting college. I've never been a social person, and making friends has always been hard for me. So one of my objectives was to find a group of like-minded people, aka nerds, and join them. This happened rather sooner than expected, and before I knew it, I was hanging out with a group of 4: King, Queen, Jack, and myself. King had a background as a long-time role-playing veteran, an overall fantasy nerd with a particular fixation on Tolkien. Queen was a metalhead with a thing for Vikings and Norse mythology, while Jack was an older guy who enjoyed poetry and the theatrical arts. I, for my part, had some experience playing vampire and werewolf and enjoyed role-playing in video games, especially MMOs, but I wasn't familiar with D&D at all. Despite the fact that we hung out together in class and in between them, we really didn't know much about each other. We all came from different backgrounds and had just banded together simply because we shared some interests. But that was it. Calling ourselves friends was a stretch at this point, which is why it took me by surprise when King invited all of us to participate in a LARP session he was organizing with another group of friends of his. I was hesitant, but seeing as Jack and Queen were going, I decided to tag along. Now, at that point, I had not even a remote idea what LARPing was all about. It was explained to me very briefly, but when the bus came to pick us up to take us to our destination, I still had many unanswered questions. Things immediately took a turn for the worse when I realized Jack had bailed on the whole affair and it was just Queen, King, myself, and like 20 other people I had never seen in my life inside a bus heading God knows where. Of course, they all knew each other from years ago, were having a very good time joking and catching up. Meanwhile, King had promptly taken Queen to her side as her guest and introduced her to the rest of the gang, leaving me aside to endure the 2-hour-long ride by myself. I felt nothing but anxiety the entire time and couldn't utter a word to anyone, and no one approached me either. When we finally arrived, I was alone amongst a sea of people, had no idea where I was or what I was supposed to do. That's when King explained the game to us. We were supposed to play pre-assigned characters during the entire day and night cycle, 24 hours, each with their own agendas and objectives. The idea was to achieve our respective goals and, during the morning of the next day, tally up the results in order to determine a winning faction and character. Now, this was more up my alley, and I immediately felt determined to play my character as best I could. However, when I received his sheet, I was kind of conflicted. My character was a thief. Or not even a thief. He was more of a peasant that wanted to steal something of value from the king. You can imagine who played him, to enrich himself and his band of rogues. The band in question was comprised of 3 people that knew each other but didn't know me, so they decided to work together and ignore the fact that I was also part of their faction. I was, again, left alone to try and harvest some fun out of this whole thing. I tried to track down Queen, but it turned out she was also part of King's entourage, so there was no approaching her without angering the guards. I realized that I need to actually describe the play arena so you can get an idea of where everyone was located. Imagine a circle of about 20 meters of diameter of flat land in the middle of a field surrounded by a thick pine forest. On the northern part of the circle, there was a tent of royals, aka King, Queen, and a couple of others, which were guarded by 2 guards at all times. On the eastern and western parts of the circle were smaller tents with different equipment and the players' belongings, and in the middle was a sort of open area with logs and stones to roleplay interactions among players. It wasn't a very big arena, and it was quite awkward to move around because you ended up bumping into people simply by moving from one spot to the other. Seeing as I had no teammates and my IRL friends were role-playing fucking each other's brains out, I decided to pursue my agenda on my own, which basically translated to me stealing a jewel from the king's tent and fence it with another player to pocket some nifty profit. Easy enough. I sneaked past the guards and crawled under it. Sure, I hadn't been seen by the guards or the people outside. I was about to start snooping around when I heard someone approaching from the front. I pocketed some valuables, but when I was about to sneak out, I heard, "Stop or perish, fool!" It was King. He had catched me, red-handed. I role-played some excuses, got on my knees, and begged for his forgiveness, trying to play the whole "my wife is so sick" card. But King, being the petty asshole he always was, decided to call the guards anyway and make an example out of me. "Chop his head off for everyone to see," he demanded with a shit-eating grin. The guards obeyed and dragged me out of the tent, kicking and screaming for my life. They then improvised a chopping block with a stump in the middle of the arena. Before you knew it, I was dead. I had played a grand total of 23 minutes. At this point, it is important to mention that the game was supposedly hardcore, meaning no magic and no resurrecting were allowed. If you were killed, that was it. You were out. Of course, seeing as the theme of the game was mostly about subterfuge and politics, there wasn't really much of a chance for anyone to get killed at all. So much so, in fact, that I was the only one who died. The organizers hadn't anticipated this would happen, so they asked King what to do with my limp body, and he simply said, "Throw it to the pigs," which meant leave him inside one of the tents. After that, I didn't know how much time had passed because I fell asleep. I could faintly hear people playing, moving about and laughing, but I was just so tired of it all that I simply dozed off, covered by coats that didn't belong to me. At some point, a couple of girls came into the tent, made an improvised ritual over my head, said I was free to live again, and then left. I saw them leave and proceeded to continue sleeping. What finally woke me up was hunger and being cold. That's when I realized it was nighttime and that I had slept for the best part of the day. I scurried out of the tent just in time to see the game crumble under its own pretentiousness. You see, apparently there were supposed to be monster attacks during the night, but people were so tired and hungry they didn't really care about the monsters and ended up inviting them to eat at the camp, which the monsters promptly accepted, thus shattering the whole illusion. King was furious that his event had been hijacked, and I saw him berate his staff in front of everyone. But in the end, he had no choice but to accept it. People were drinking beer and playing with foam swords. I timidly approached the main campfire to find Queen completely drunk singing some weird song in a language I didn't understand. She saw me, greeted me, and handed me a plate with bread and some meat, which I devoured instantly. I spent the next hours lip-syncing to songs I didn't know, surrounded by people too drunk to care about my existence. This was probably the highlight of the entire trip, to be quite frank. Also, at some point, I got up, grabbed a foam sword, and dueled with another guy that went all Naruto on me. We exchanged blows, but I hit him in the head a little too hard, and people gave me the stink eye for not being a good sport. I didn't give a shit. It felt pretty good. The next morning, I was ready to leave and never come back. I was tired, my body was sore, and I was cold and had eaten very little. When they announced the winners of the game, take a fat guess who was the deserving champion. Why, of course, the king and queen. People clapped, but I don't know if it was truly sincere. When the bus was about to arrive, King asked me if I had enjoyed the session. I looked at him in the eye and told him, "You killed me on the first hour." He paused for a second, looked around, and then laughed it off as if what I had said was a joke. "What a dick," I muttered as I went into the bus. On the ride back, Queen sat by my side and apologized for leaving me behind, but she simply had so much fun she forgot about me. I shrugged and told her she wasn't my mom, so she shouldn't feel guilty. She asked me if I wanted to return for another session. "Fuck no," I simply said, and then I put on my headphones and drifted away from this miserable, miserable experience. TLDR, try to take part in a LARP session to bond with new friends, end up feeling lonelier than ever. What an absolute disaster. This one especially hits home with me because I know this exact feeling all too well. I was very much, when I was younger, a kind of kid who just would try so hard to just get out and make friends, even just stepping very far out of my comfort zone, just because I was hoping it meant that I could make friends and bond with people, only to just be left completely alone because no one really cared if I was there or not. So my heart goes all the way out to OP. I'm so sorry this happened to you. That really fucking sucks. I do hope OP has found, or at least will find soon, a group of people that actually give a shit about how they're feeling and want to talk with them and engage with them, not like these fuckfaces did. Honest to God, to me, it really does feel as if King actually just wanted to invite Queen because they probably had some kind of crush on them or something and like wanted to be like, ooh, yeah, come with me so we can hang out, but oh, right, we're in this friend circle, so I guess I have to invite them as well. And I think that's what ended up happening, because it definitely seemed as if King didn't really care if OP was actually there or not. It was more just having a good time with Queen. To be honest, I wouldn't be shocked, considering it was mentioned before that King was helping run the event, if, that they had a bit of a hand in the roles that they and Queen got, specifically for the same reason I said, which is just an extra level of gross. Like, can't just be a fucking adult. If you didn't want the other two people to be there, then just don't invite them. Just invite the person you like. It's really not that difficult to do. Or, I don't know, be a normal person. Ask them on a date, why don't you? I don't know. That's just speculation. I would love to hear everyone's thoughts in the comments and things below. Despite the bad rep people give about LARP and things, it is something that I would love to try someday, but I know I certainly would never want to do it with random strangers, not unless I already had a decent friend group, or at least a friend I could go do it with. This, in general, sounds like a shit show, and I would not blame OP for never trying it ever again. But again, I do hope that they're in a better place now with some better people in general. But enough of that. Please do like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below again. Do consider subscribing to my Patreon so you can get these videos early and see all the lovely readings as soon as they are made. And with that, my lords, ladies, and lieges, I will see you in the next video. Zodiac, out.